All right. Welcome back to another episode, Digital Recruiter Podcast. I have an awesome guest today who has a wealth of knowledge and is the CEO of Signature Back Office Solutions. That if you're a recruiter and you are kind of looking to learn about staffing, or you maybe are coming from the air tech and you do know the staffing world, this is a must listen because an EOR back office solution provider like Signature can be a game changer for you, your business, especially if you ever think about selling your agency or whatever that kind of looks like. So we're going to get into all that. Jon, thanks for being here, man.
Clark, great to be here. Look forward to the discussion. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Well, let's dive into it and give maybe the listeners some context on kind of your background. Like,
Sure.
when did you get into the recruiting and staffing space?
I think it's the when and the how. And, I've met very few people in this industry that actually sought it out, right? It just seemed to have fallen in their laps, right? And I'm the same. I fell into this business in the early 90s, showing my age, in healthcare, and was working for one of the large, probably at the time, the largest search firm, Merritt Hawkins, now part of AMN. And what we would do is go find usually primary care physicians that were needed in rural communities across the U.S. And so we would work with the hospital and sometimes the city itself on attracting physicians to come into their community and practice medicine and serve their community. So I fell in love with recruiting right then because I saw this cool blend of psychology, where you go to work, what you do, and then also the business impact. And in the recruiting world for physicians, it's not a high velocity deal because you're generally involving the move, a geographic move. So I did that for about 3 years. And then I heard about this technology recruiting world and had a friend that went over to a company, Matrix Resources. I joined in 1996 and spent 28 years there. And it was just a rocket ride of, at the time, we had 2 offices. When we sold the company in 2022, we had 17 offices. We had 2,000 consultants and like 250 internal employees. It was my work family for, like I said, 28 years. Learned a ton, failed a lot, succeeded a bit, and just learned a lot about the business. And I became a self-professed staffing geek. I love it, and you look at, again, you look at the art and the science to what we do. And where I really started to have fun was leveraging the science, being smart about the data, but really applying the art to the craft to really start to make meaningful impacts. So yeah, I fell in love with this business, and here I am 30 something years later.
I love it. And the reason I wanted to start with that is because when you talk EOR, there is, with a lot of recruiters have, well, do you know actually what I do? Right.
Yeah.
Have you done what I do? Right. It's always a big question with back office support or tech or anything else, or even coaching like myself. Right. There's a lot of that. So for the listeners, wanted to make sure that we've established, what you're doing and then some in this
Yeah.
space. What inspired, talk to us about Signature. And for those that don't know, what is it that you guys do? And we'll start there.
We're kind of like that group that does all the things you don't want to do.
Yep.
So if you got into recruiting, you started your own firm, you probably didn't start your own firm to go build your own back office. You started a firm because you had clients that you wanted to service. You had talent that you wanted to place. What we do is provide all the back office minutia that helps you focus on the things that you're best at and you're most interested in. So these are things like providing insurance so that you can put consultants on assignment and have general liability, professional liability, Cyber insurance is huge right now. You've got a lot of companies demanding $5 million in cyber coverage if you place a consultant on assignment. So we combine insurance, we combine financing. You go out and you start your own firm and then you get 10 contractors placed. That's the great news. But then you've got to pay 10 contractors and you don't get paid for 60 days. And guess what? Those people want to get paid every 1 to 2 weeks. So we kind of meld in the funding, the insurance, and then we give the tools, the technology to run the back office. So things like timesheets, online timesheets and approvals, invoicing, onboarding, getting people successfully onboarded into their new assignment. So we're behind the curtain. We support about 500 staffing firms here in North America. And if you add it up, since we started in 2006, we've done over 120,000 contract placements, all through our staffing firm partners across the U.S. We're in most labor categories, so healthcare, IT, marketing, legal, but then we also get into construction, light industrial. which is really cool for me because I get to look in this window of a different part of the labor category that I've never been exposed to until now.
I, I love it. And if you're listening, I mean, I've you and I met a few months ago at the Ohio Staffing Association. I
That's
met
right.
you and Dawson in person, and I heard of the name Signature before, but now that it's been more on my radar, you guys more on my radar. I'm telling people more about you. I mean, the reputation is stellar. So if you don't know, and I always say this at ATS, talk to a few people, but make sure Signature and Jon and Dawson, they're people that and Don that you're talking to, because it's so good to have people like that in the back pocket. I know I made a recommendation to you guys last week from one of my clients
Yeah.
that is newer in the recruiting and staffing space. I'm like, go talk to Jon and Dawson before you do anything else. Like, you have to talk to them. They'll break it all down, for you, right, and make it doable. And this could be a whole revenue stream that they didn't even know could exist 2 weeks ago. So yeah, it's so cool what the EOR space does, what Signature, what you guys are doing, and the reputation. Because coming from Aerotech and leaving, I didn't even know it was possible to do what we did at Aerotech on your own.
Yeah.
When I left, I didn't even know it was a thing until about 3 or 4 years ago. And there's this whole space where you take that talent, right? The talent that the sales that you have from that staffing days, and then you can leverage it. And now you're not getting a fraction of what Aerotech's paying you. You're getting way more of the enchilada, if you will, right? By leveraging those relations that you've built on your own. So it's super cool, and I geek out over it, because it's just like, it's awesome what it's done for some people's careers and some of my clients that have partnered with EOR, providers like yourself.
Well, there are about 21,000 staffing firms in the United States, and most of those are smaller in nature, and most of the firms that are out there focus on direct hire only. And they view this contract, staff augmentation, fractional, whatever you want to call the temporary worker in the professional environment, the contractor. They view that as a really big step out of their comfort zone. A direct hire is pretty straightforward, right? You get a job order, you go find a candidate, you make a placement, you collect a fee, and you move on. And in the contract world, we like to call it's the gift that keeps on giving. You make that placement, and then for every hour they work, you start receiving gross margin profit every week. And it stacks on top of itself. And so while it's not this huge, big mountain of money, think of it as like a river of money that's constantly flowing in between these big mountains of money. And don't look at it as either or. It's not just do contract staffing or just do direct hire staffing. Put those two things together, and now you've got a more consistent revenue stream within your firm. And I think what's most important is you're solving more of your current customers' problems. Because guess what? If you're doing direct hire staffing already with one of your clients, the odds are they're already doing contract staffing with somebody. It's just not you. So raise your hand, let them know that you can service them. One of the cool things, Clark, I think you were surprised about, we're in all 50 states.
Yep.
We can work in all markets. We can work, like I said, in most labor categories. So, if you need to be turned on, if you will, in the state of Illinois tomorrow, we can have you up and running and give you that full support behind the scenes to make it easier for you to do what you do.
It's huge. And I know, because like healthcare and light industrial are two that not every EOR does. And I
Right.
know that. I mean, of other ones, I know, but those are two big ones. And I know I came from the light industrial skill trade background. I have a ton of healthcare recruitment clients that we supported and helped really drive their lead engine and their top of funnel, and really get even more out of mediums like LinkedIn and stuff like that, right? To drive more business, to be able to have more opportunities to place contractors and or direct hire. And a couple of things that I just heard you say that are so important. Number one, you don't know if you don't ask or don't share your capabilities.
Yeah. So
And that's
true.
one of the things I see all the time. And I know you and I have talked about it. It's like, you just got to ask. Like, hey, we've helped here. What else? Do you guys do contractors ever? Or like departments? And it's amazing how often the manager either assumes that you don't do that, right? Or that they might not even know. They might hear of it. I was like, oh, yeah, that's like the contractor department or division. Meanwhile, that could be a $5 million division for a staffing agency and all that. And it's kind of like a throwaway line for a manager that maybe makes a few direct hires a year and stuff like that. So it's like you never know. And that's one of the lessons I learned at Aerotech. If you just are asking the questions and probing, it's amazing what you can unearth, right, in the opportunities that can develop. So I don't know if you have like best practices on that or tips or anything else, but um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think you nailed it. It's asking questions. Good salespeople ask good questions. They
yeah,
try to show up, be intelligent enough to understand the environment they're working with, ask
yeah,
the right questions. And I think it's how you pose those questions too. It's not, do you use contract staffing? It's how do you employ contractors
yeah,
inside your organization? And you may be with someone who has no visibility to that, but odds are there's somebody in that organization that's buying contract labor. Your job is to network and be able to go find that. I'm a huge believer. The more problems you can solve for a client, the more sticky you become, the more valuable you are. That only creates a client for life. And it doesn't take 100 different clients where you're just doing one and done permanent placement fees and then you're off to your next deal.
yeah.
Because if you can stop and hover for just long enough to ask the right questions, get a sense for what's beyond the obvious, and really start to solve some problems that might be below the surface. I'll give you an example. We were working with a group, two gentlemen that pulled away from a large staffing firm and said, "We finally want to go start our own thing." And somebody referred them into us, and they were just floored. They had no idea that somebody could do all this back office,
Yeah.
and for them, it was really the economics. They didn't have the cash flow to front the payroll for these consultants, and frankly, they looked at factoring, but they didn't like the terms of the factoring. They didn't like the fact that they didn't do the full turnkey service. They would still have to do timesheets. They still had to become the employer of record, which has its own slew of paperwork that's got to get done in each state. And once we connected with them, we really started to get into a rhythm of helping them solve problems. And one of their clients said, "We're having a challenge getting laptops issued fast enough for these contract workers to go to work." And so we said, "Why don't you guys just buy laptops for them and charge them for it?" And they're like, "We can't do that." "Yeah, you can. Why don't you offer it up?" So, by solving a customer's problem, they now have like 25 laptops that they've had paid for by the client. They've solved a problem for their client. And now they're that much more sticky when it comes time to evaluate how much value is this firm bringing to the table. Because yes, it is about making that placement, that contract placement, but what other problems are latent below the surface that might be there that you could help solve?
It, it's such a good point. And I'm thinking immediately, I think of my own business. I'm sure every listener is thinking of their own desk and their own client relationships when you're sharing that story of when you know someone that can solve your problems and like they can figure it out for you. I mean, who are you going to call when you have another problem and another problem? And I've gone that kind of on Digital Recruiter. I know obviously you get those phone calls, and it's half the time that's what creates new revenue opportunities is what I've seen. It's just being known as someone that might have some answers, or you can brainstorm, or it can be kind of a whiteboard session, and sometimes we can just execute and just like try to make stuff happen. Just being known as a problem solver. I think people are always asking, how do I get more clients and how do I do BD? It's just like figure out a way to be that, right?
Yeah.
And you do that through marketing, you do that through your meetings, getting more market share, like however you do it. For me, I love leveraging automation and content as a way to show the types of problems I solve and getting in front of those people. But at the end of the day, to your point, it is about showing that I can solve problems. Right. And you either resonate with that or you don't. And I'm okay. It's okay if you don't, because I can find enough people, to your point, not millions, but enough people that do resonate with it, right? That can build a legit business.
Yeah, I think so often we get into these silos of I'm going to be a recruiter or I'm going to be a salesperson,
Yeah.
right? Or I'm calling Clark and I'm calling Clark with the intention of trying to get business out of Clark, meaning give me a job order. And if you go back to the human element and you just realize that Clark, if he's a hiring manager, he is a hiring manager today. He could be a candidate tomorrow,
Yep.
right? And so this full life cycle of just calling Clark and saying, "Hey, Clark, it's Jon. I'm with Signature. I don't know you. You don't know me, but I wanted to get to know you because I do two things. I help people manage their careers and I help companies find great talent. And I just thought it made sense for us to connect and get to know one another." That person doesn't know if you're calling to recruit them or you're calling to sell them. And in reality, shouldn't you be doing both?
Yes.
You know? And so
And
taking that approach forward as you start to build your business, it brings a little bit of sanity to what can be a very insane business, right? In the recruiting world. Those that have been in the recruiting space for more than a couple of years know that this is the best job in the world and this is the worst job in the world, like in the same day, right? And the more you can start to bring sanity to the process and treat each communication, each interaction holistically. And by that, I mean understanding where they are today, maybe where they might be tomorrow. And again, trying to solve those problems that are like below the surface, not the obvious ones. Those are easy. Try to dig under just a bit more and build that relationship so that you can understand what might be needed to help them succeed.
That's where the magic is. It's so good. I mean, it's so good. That's the essence of what we try to coach. I think it's what, Wednesday we're recording this on. I think I've had 8 of those conversations already this week at minimum with
Yeah.
clients and all that, just on that focal point, right? And I had a client call yesterday, the beginning of the call. We've had our best month, but we hit the goal that we set for them for September. And then the end of the call, the candidate declined the offer. He texts me 4 hours later. Well, it turns out that the second candidate was theirs. They also declined the offer. The third candidate was ours. She accepted. Right. So it went, that was the whole pendulum in 4 hours yesterday.
Oh, man.
Right. With the clients. So to your point, it was a great month, an okay day, and it turned into a great day. Right. It's all in that time frame. And that's what it is, right? You just have to build up the pipeline, the conversation, that knowledge, but also just, I've talked about patience this week when I've been posting
Yes.
in your business development and everything else. But patience doesn't mean you're passive, right? Those are two different things. And but that word holistic, I love that you use that because that's what this is. And even if that was your BD approach, I don't know if you're a candidate or a hiring manager right now, and I don't care either way.
Yes.
Imagine the friction that reduces. And I see it because that's a big approach that we promote with our clients, is immediately the walls come down and people are open to it. And the clients that we see that have success, people, how do I get ROI and all that? I'm like, are you willing to talk to a VP of sales if they're looking for a job right now? I don't know. Well, then you have some work to do mentally with your mindset, because that ultimately is going to tell you how big of a pipeline you're actually going to be able to build. Is if you have that. Now, you don't need to talk to 100 candidates every week to do BD. But if you don't have time for 5 to 10 and you're looking for new clients, something's off with your process and the way you're looking at business development.
Well, I've heard a little bit about your training and concepts, and I resonate with them wholeheartedly. And what I like about them is you're not calling to sell a service or a solution. You're calling to sell the conversation. The goal is just to extend that conversation enough to where a relationship can get built so that when the time comes that they need help, you're at the top of top of the list in that regard. Solving those problems that are below the surface, that are out there. They're not going to tell you right off the phone, absolutely, Clark, I've been waiting on you to call. I've got 3 openings and gosh, help me out. I wish it worked that way, but it doesn't, right?
Nope.
And building that process, and you talk a lot about process, building a process that is independent of an event, just building that cadence of consistent activity. And I heard a quote the guy taught me early on in my career. It's like, when the numbers are up, keep your head down and stay focused. And when the numbers are down, keep your head up. It's going to be all right. Keep focusing on that process, and don't ride that wave too high and don't ride the wave too low when things don't go your way. Just use the most powerful word you got. Next. Just go on to the next thing.
Man, you want whenever you're done, it's a signature. You come coach with us. You got it locked down, man.
I told you I love this business, and
so
I
good.
resonate with your coaching.
Yeah, no, it's so good, and it's also spot on. And I think you and I both know Keely Flood.
Stud.
Keely's awesome. I've known him for a couple of years. He's coached with a lot of my clients. He handles a lot of he talks to a lot of the prospective digital recruiter clients now. And his story when he was at MedX is always his biggest client, his biggest champion at his biggest client was someone he made 0 placements with. Mm-hmm. But he introduced him to everyone. That was the reason that they were the biggest client. And it's such an impactful story. And I have him share it on any workshops, any coaching calls, anything, because it gets people's heads wrapped around. That's like, oh, that's the point of this. My job is to be, you're basically a PI, a private investigator of companies. Like, you're just get all the intel And then we're going to figure out a course of action to break that account, if we're even going to be able to break that account, or when, whatever, because then you can start prioritizing accounts. That's your job first. It's not outreach to client. It's like, it's this whole kind of spider web, and it's like True Detective, right? You got the whiteboard, the strings the attach, and this person knows this person, and all that. We're way more of that. That's the top billers are doing that on business development versus anything else. And there's no one expectation of this is going to close. And when you don't have that, guess what happens? Things, quote unquote, fall in your lap because you have 50 things that could come through, of which 5 or 10 will, versus you have 3 things that you're like, that all 3 have to come through. If that, I got nothing. Right.
Yes.
And it's just such a different mindset. But I like that story that he shared, because that is the reality in
Mm-hmm.
the agency staffing life.
I think the more arrows you can have in your quiver, the more tools you can bring to the challenge, the opportunity, the more likely you are to be successful. And don't define success in the short term, right? Define that success over the long term. What that means to you is going to vary by person, but invest in relationships, because people still today, no doubt, they buy from people they know, like, and trust. They always have, and they always will. Now, how they become known and how that trust is built is different today. Digitally, it's a lot different than it was when I started in the industry with literally a roll of dimes and a telephone, right? Today, offering out content first, starting to become known in the industry in terms of what you're putting out there about who you are, how you operate, and what you do, that's key. That's critical. It's funny when you talked about the referral pattern. I found that most of my best referrals came from people I never placed. Just, but I just built a relationship with them.
It, it's I have that now with Digital Recruiter. I have a
Yeah.
couple people. One comes to mind, Travis Janko. We've done a lot of splits together, his agency and our agency. But he never bought. I don't think he's bought my course. He hasn't paid me for a consult, because he was doing Digital Recruiter stuff before I even started this, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I wanted just to get to know him, because he was so validating for what I had as a vision and mission for my company. He's referred dozens of people to me and
Yeah.
refuses to take a cent for anything. And he
Yeah.
just does it because that's how he thinks, that's how he operates. And so when you find people like that, number one, like gratitude, gratitude, gratitude.
Yes.
Reminds me, and just like, then I platform in every time I can, give them platform opportunity, like, because I'm so grateful for it. And it's so, and I never looked at him. I was like, how am I going to get revenue? I mean, he's just like, it was just like, I'm just going to get to know him because he thinks we see things alike. And if he has that trust in me and vice versa, it's, I'm always looking out for him, whenever I can, and vice versa. Like, those are the people you want in your corner. And if you think consultatively and networking, that's the way to do it, and not in some cheesy way,
Yes.
right? But just like, truly, like, but I think it comes with like figuring out your boundaries, right? Your value prop, like, what do you stand for? What do you not stand for? And if you don't really have that, it's hard to know who is in your corner or who you want to be in your corner, right?
Yeah. I go back to the Kevin Bacon, right? 6 Degrees of Separation, it's all the movies he was in. I don't think it takes a huge circle, but that circle that you do create has got to be developed and watered and nurtured and cared for. And so one of the things I always found helpful for me when I was executing my week or my day is I had this list of people. I called them my feel good calls. These are people that probably never bought from me, but they would take my call. They would talk to me about the business, or maybe not talk about business, talk about football, talk about kids, talk about something. Inevitably, over time, those calls led to a referral. Those calls led to an idea that I'd never thought of. Those calls led to a problem that just manifested, that came out of nowhere because I was in the conversation. And so I think, again, coming into, if you got into this business by accident, which most of us do, and you treat it as a job, it's going to be a beating. But if you treat it as a profession, right, you really wear that cloak of profession, and you look at this group of people that you build a relationship with over time, it's going to yield fruit again and again and again. And, at the risk of sounding self-serving, I'll just tell you, and the numbers bear this out, the percentage of the workforce today that is choosing to enter into the contract labor pool is greater than it's ever been. It continues to increase. And that's for a variety of reasons. The gig economy, the fractional economy is happening at lightning pace. Number two, People are more interested in taking their skills and shopping them somewhere else. I want to go do this job for 2 years and then take it and go somewhere else in a different industry, still doing what I do today. On the other side of that equation, companies are more interested in hiring people to solve a problem today. And maybe that doesn't mean that they stay 30 years and get a gold watch and retire there. The numbers are bearing this out. So if you're a recruiter today and you're not leveraging the power of contract staffing to build your income to your firm, and oh, by the way, starting the month not at zero because you've got revenue coming in from the work you did 3 months ago, my plea would be consider contract staffing, adding that to your toolkit. It's not as big of a reach as you think it is. And whether you use Signature or somebody else, we're out here to help you make that gap, close that gap, make the jump into contract staffing. Call on us. We're here to help. And yes, we'll do all the mechanics behind the scenes too, but we'll help walk you down that path so that you can get into that world of contract staffing on your own.
Dive into those trends more, because I think it's really important for people to hear, and we're all seeing it day to day, right? It started with Uber and Lyft, and then there's Upwork and all this stuff. So I think part of the perception, maybe this is my own perception, and that comes from contract, where contract always made sense because I learned it at Aerotech, and then I saw the gig economy, but it really is expanding into into areas that were traditionally maybe more direct hire.
Yeah.
A lot of times, like what does that look like? Boots on the ground, if you will. I
Yeah.
don't even know if that makes sense. If I was saying, but like in like layman's terms, what does that mean if I'm a recruiter looking to take advantage of this?
So let's take finance and accounting, for example, right?
Yep.
Not traditionally known to use a high percentage of contract laborers, but where we see the need coming up today is when a new accounting system gets put in place, when a new process starts to unroll. They need people that have those skills to come in and add value nearly immediately. And so there's this opportunity that organizations are leveraging today to bring in contract staff that has the experience. Maybe it's with a technology or a platform that they don't have today. So they come in and they add value. They do that work today to help them implement this new way of doing business. And then this knowledge transfer starts to take place. They bleed their expertise into their direct hire people so that they become competent in that skill set as well. And so buyers of talent today look at this and say, wow, wait a minute. I need this core group. My core group strategy are the people that I need full time that are part of my company forever. And then I need to augment that core group with a group of specialists that come in and help me depending on whatever's going on in the day. I need to roll out a new supply chain management software. I need to roll out a new process from an accounting standpoint. And I need people that have that requisite experience. For me to train my team, get them up to speed on this new technology, this new process, and take them away from their day job really puts me underwater. So I'm going to go rent those skills for a period of time. And I'm going to gain not only the output for that project, but I'm going to gain the knowledge transfer that they bring to my organization that stays after they leave. So the campsite's left better than when they found it, right? Because they've spilled that knowledge over to the full-time employees. So that's where we see it unfold today. One other way that we see this unfolding, Clark, is when you've got merger and acquisition activities taking place, right? These are they're very event-based happenings where either pre-sale, we need to button things up and get it ready to sell, or post-sale, we need to integrate things together. There's a clock, there's a horizon, a time horizon that thing starts and ends. And so the buyers of contract labor see this as an opportunity. And where before they might have gone out and hired a big consulting firm, right? Nobody ever got fired for hiring fill in the blank, Accenture,
Yeah.
IBM, Deloitte. What's happening today is customers are more savvy. They don't need to pay for all the weight of one of those big consulting firms all the time. And I don't mean to sound disparagingly against those big firms because they're great. They have their place. But in a smaller environment where you just need one or two projects kicked off, don't pay for the heavyweight. Buy the individual resources that can help get you there, and then let them move on to their next gig, and you're left better for it in a cheaper investment module than having to pay for a whole outsourced entity and team that you don't need.
This very well said. And I think the example that comes to mind from a couple calls I've had with some firms this year is like SAP. And I'm not don't quote me exactly on this, but there's I think a big update or upgrade that happens with SAP software in like a year or two, and so they need all these contractors. Like different companies need all these contractors to come in and basically help boost up and upgrade these companies that are using SAP. Right,
Mm-hmm.
otherwise it's going to be outdated or it's just not going to work for them
Right.
anymore. Right, and so I know that's like a huge contract and staffing opportunity. I mean, there's these different pockets, and I'm sure you know the dozens more. Right, just based on the 500 plus firms that you work with, like that's the other benefit of talking and working with someone like you. Like where the pockets are,
Yeah.
right? Instead of trying to figure out on your own, if you're looking to get started, like work with a team like you. Right? Get going, like get up and running, and kind of be able to kind of take in some of that knowledge and some of the opportunity that you could target and match that up with some of your strengths, and then go after it. Right?
Yeah.
Like again, have the resources in your back pocket.
I think there's a seasonality aspect to this as well that's kind of unique to contract labor. And
Yeah.
some of it follows the calendar. So if you're coming into Q4, staffing's been in some pretty tough headwinds, right? The last 2 years has not been super kind to the staffing industry. We've earned our stripes over the last couple of years, but there is still work that has to get done at a corporation level. And so if they're rolling into the last quarter of the year and there's projects that are on the docket that aren't getting done, they need to get that work done. And somebody's bonus may be on the line, somebody's job may be on the line. And so hiring contractors to do that discrete project makes a lot of sense. Now, not all companies follow the Q4 being October to December. Their fiscal calendar may be different. So asking those types of questions in terms of, hey, Mr. Hiring Manager, what big projects are on your plate right now? What big initiatives is the company up to right now? And oh, by the way, how are you doing against those initiatives? Are those goals being met, right? Simple, straightforward questions, but slowing down just enough to be able to get a sense from the buyer side. What are they facing every day? What are they up to? Get beyond the job order and come back up to the macro level and really start to ask thoughtful questions about what's keeping them, I hate the phrase, but what's keeping them up at night? What's giving them some challenges?
If you did that 50 times a day, and that's all you did, 250 a week. I mean, you can cut that out. You get 20 a day. I mean,
Yeah.
whatever you want, that's 100 a week times, that could be 5,000 in a year. If you ask that question 5,000 times with 5,000 different people in your space within your ICP, what would your BD look like?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just, and that's the best part about the digital tools and content, and everything. You have the ability to do that now, like at scale, and you could gather, I call it farming at scale, and then you kind of hunt
Mm-hmm.
within there. You can do that consistently every day. Well, it's like, well, I don't know where my clients are going to come from. Well, that's the whole point. Kind of right. That's the BD. That's where you got to kind of keep digging in. But you do that based off the responses. Some people are super short. Some people aren't. I had someone yesterday that been in the biotech pharma recruiting space for 6 years. I could tell by her profile. I had my intro, introducing myself. He said thanks, and I saw he reposted a bunch of content. But he's been recruiting for 6 years. Probably knows what he's doing. Right. Went through COVID, everything else, pharma, biotech. It's an industry that I've had a lot of success with clients in. So I was like, hey, like, when are we going to see some original content? I'm sure you have like a ton to share. You've been at it in the space. He goes, thanks for the advice, Clark. Like, and that was it. Right. On to the next one. Right. It's totally fine. It's not
Right.
for everyone. He kind of showed me, all right, there's not maybe not much going on upstairs there. That's fine. Right. But it's too bad because the opportunity I see here, and that's all we can do is give people the opportunity. Right.
Yes.
The next conversation I had was a call that booked for today. So like
Mm.
there's the ebb and flow, and I don't care. I don't take it personally. Right. It's just giving the people the exchange, the chance to engage. Right.
Sure.
That's really all you can do. And it's kind of fun to deal with some of the answers. Right. It's also fun when you book calls and people turn into clients. It's also kind of fun when you at the approach of like some of the answers that you do get or some of the lack, because like we get excited about our own thing, and sometimes like I can't believe not everyone's so jacked up about this. Right. For you, it's like, I want to ask you about this because you significantly increase the value of people's firms, right,
Yeah.
when they're up and going. Like I see that too of like, oh, I see what you could do. It's at your fingertip, but it's okay, right? It's amazing. I had a good friend say to me the other week, it's amazing what people do, how people react when you give them the answers to their problems. Uh, and in this case, maybe I assumed that he had a problem, but it's just, I'll leave it at that. It is
Yeah.
pretty interesting. Um,
I'll tell you like a
yeah,
couple of tips that just, oldie but goodies. But One easy question to ask once you're in an engagement on a BD call and you're turning this into a BD call, one throwaway question is, hey, is there anybody that was on your team in the past that you want to bring back on a contract basis?
Easy.
Let me be a resource for you, right? And you'd be surprised how many times they may not have the answer right then, but then like literally a week later, you know what? I do actually. I want to bring back, and they need a vehicle to bring that person back on board. They need a contract vehicle to give that arm's length distance to the contractor. That's where we fall into the scope. And then, the other, like it's a hidden Salesforce. And once you get this Salesforce figured out, oh my gosh, it's viral. So the hidden Salesforce is once you start to place a contractor or two, these contractors are on the inside of your client. They're sitting in budget meetings. They're involved in projects that are underway. They know which projects are not going to make it on time and need resources. And so it's a fine line. You don't want to inappropriately use information. You don't want them to be in there selling. But this is not a set it and forget it situation. Those contractors get on site at your client. Stay in touch with them. They're your biggest advocates, allies, and your ears on the ground to tell you what's going on.
AirTech push take them out to lunches, both the clients, but also candidates, like recruiters, like take your contractors out to lunch, like the ones that give you referrals and give you intel. And I think that was one of the biggest things that amazed me being more in the direct hire world the last few years is there's no follow-up on first day,
right.
First week, first month, which is what we were trained on doing. And yet there is so much low-hanging fruit that I see on the direct hire side. It is astonishing. That when I get in there and talk to people, there's no follow up. So I don't know what they're up to. I don't know how they're doing. If they're still there, I'm like, how? Because
it's
for
fear.
me, it is fear, right? But it was like if someone didn't stay past a week, 2 weeks, it's my PTSD from light industrial, the turnover. Right. That like I had to check in. We had to check in. And I just thought that was normal, but it's definitely not. But anyways, please go ahead.
No, it's fear of like, oh my gosh, what if they're not going to stay to 90 days and I don't get to keep my fee, right? So I think, building that cadence, especially on the contract side, is super important. And we had talked, earlier, I think when we were in Ohio about, if you're building your firm and you think back to that book Stephen Covey wrote, 7 Habits, right? And one of the main themes out of that book was begin with the end in mind. Mm-hmm. And if you're building your firm, if you think about what eventually and it seems so far away, right? You're just getting your firm started. But at the end of the day, eventually you're going to want to sell it to your employees. You're going to want to sell it to a strategic buyer, or you're going to want to sell it to a financial buyer because it's an asset you're building, right? And the valuation of your firm is dramatically different when you have just full-time only. When you're just being able to sell your firm for full-time fees only, you're going to maybe get 1x the value of your firm. If you can just add a little bit of contract, if you could get 30% of your margin coming from contract business, you're going to get somewhere between 3 and 8x the value of your firm. That's life-changing. That's life-changing dollars there with not making a huge change to what you do every day.
Can you break down, because it's something I share all the time with people, but can you break down why buyers look at it and increase as a higher valuation because of that?
Yeah. It's that whole event versus process. When I'm buying a staffing firm that has contractors on assignment, I've got recurring revenue. I've got contracts with end clients that need to probably buy more contract staffing. So I'm buying something that's good today, but also has a real need in the future that's going to continue to buy from me. So it's that recurring revenue, number one. Number two, it's the breadth of services within an existing account. So you've got more hooks into your client, which makes you more sticky. So you're less likely to see that client leave after a transaction takes place. So if I'm a buyer, the risk of that asset going away goes way down when there's contract involved because I've got recurring revenue. I'm solving more than just one problem, and I've got a relationship that goes beyond just the job order itself. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense to me. It's just you're so articulate that I had it recorded once, so I can just send this clip to a bunch of people that you explain it way better than I have. But it totally makes sense. It's the environment I grew up in, quote unquote, on the recruiting side. I think sometimes it's just hard for people to grasp their mind around.
Yeah.
And so I think you've done a great job of, what questions to ask, how to break in the door, but then also the value on the back end when you are looking to sell, if you are looking to sell. And I think it's so important to look at things in the beginning. To your point, the best things in recruiting and sales are done when there's more front end work and strategy done, qualifying clients, qualifying roles, like all that. The more of that strategically you can do on the front end, right, you're going to get a better result at the end. It's no different when you're building out a firm.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Totally.
it's very well explained. And to continue off of that, I know one of the topic things that you're passionate about is developing clients for life, right? And how, I guess, in kind of what your experience, what you've seen, what you've done personally, what you're seeing people do successfully now, like how do you develop, right, kind of that portfolio of clients for life?
Yeah, it's fun when you get there, and you never know. The pathway is very rarely the same pathway to get there.
Yeah.
It'll have a bunch of twists and turns, but generally speaking, it comes down to when staffing is involved, there will always be a problem. Something's always going to go wrong, and how you show up when those problems come up is how that relationship really starts to be matured. And so I would tell you the real selling, the real relationship litmus test occurs when something doesn't go well, when the candidate doesn't do a good job, when the client runs off the candidate and it turns out to be a bad environment. How do you deal with that problem? How do you still solve for X? Not worrying about whose fault it is, not worrying about where to place the blame, but how to focus on what's the right solution to help get them out from where they are today. Not just washing your hands from that problem and moving on to the next thing. So that's one way to start to build a client for life. And then I think number two is just to be super transparent and vulnerable and be willing to take some risks with your client. So again, going back to that laptop example, I mean, you don't get into recruiting to build a portfolio of 30 laptops, right? But if you really do truly have the mindset to solve problems, maybe that's a way that you start to build a client for life because they know, gosh, Clark might be able to provide a solution for me. And it doesn't mean you have to monetize every one of your solutions. I mean, be a connector, be the conduit between what their problem is and what their potential solution could be. Help connect those dots. Whether you monetize that or not, it's going to pay dividends. And that's how you build that client for life. And then, lastly, I would just say, tell the truth. I mean, how many times do you hear recruiters calling up saying, I've got the perfect candidate for your job, right? Or let's make it even worse. How many times do you call a candidate and say, listen, Clark, I've got the perfect job for you? I mean, how presumptuous is that? I don't know you. I don't know what you're looking for. And if I'm real honest, I don't really know exactly what I have in terms of the job. Our job is to, truthfully try to articulate, what do I have? What do I think you have? And is there any crossover? Is there any reason to continue this conversation? And if you take that mindset of just being completely open and vulnerable, you'd be amazed at what kind of buy-in you get from both sides of that transaction.
That's so good. That's so good. Just I'm nodding my head. I'm agreeing. I mean, the whole time. I mean, it's what I've seen on my side of things. I think every recruiter that's survived and thrived in this industry has seen, and you just articulated so well. The little words matter. I see I fix it messaging. Hey, I saw your profile, reviewed your background. I think you might be a potential fit
There you go.
for an opportunity that my client's hiring for, that we're exclusively hiring for a client in your area, right? Or like those little words matter, and they actually absolve you from making so many promises you can't
Great
keep.
point. Great point.
And it's like those things matter. Like I love the macro and the holistic, but then when I get into it, I'm such a stickler for the micro at times, because that's actually where you can save people so much time. I've noticed, like, wasted time, because like, hey, follow up with me in a week. No. hey, you check in with me every couple of weeks. Anytime you want to check in with me, check in. Right, put the ball in their court because you can't. You can only handle so much
That's
as a
right.
producer, as a recruiter. Right, those little things. I had a great manager that was so good at teaching me those things at Aerotech, and it saved me all the time in the world. Like, don't be afraid to put the ball in the other person's hands, right, on the other side of the court, and let them sit with it, and they'll tell you, they'll respond in kind. Right.
Oh
And
yeah.
then sometimes recruiters they want to play therapist and hero to everyone. And then they weigh themselves down in trying to do that. Whereas it's like, no, it takes two to tango, and it's okay. That's actually the healthiest way to be. You're inviting them to have skin in the game. And if not, to your point, that's okay. Right. Does it make
Absolutely.
sense to continue the conversation? If not, totally fine. Should I start this conversation with someone else that you know? Right. Or, hey, what type of conversation would be more relevant for you and I to have? Right. Like, you can pivot there and all
Yes.
that. So I hopefully me adding stuff is helping, but I mean, you just articulate what, and it just fires me up when I hear these things, said by someone with your background, your experience, what you've done, because the principles that work are tried and true.
Yeah, they are. They work. They do for sure.
So, any last thing that we want to you want to share with you? I mean, you shared so much wisdom this the last few. I mean, the whole time. Anything
Oh,
else people should be thinking about 2025 staffing, about signature, just in
yeah.
general, right, in the space.
I think, first of all those ideas are stolen. Somebody else gave me those ideas, right? You just,
Same.
when you're around long enough and if you can be cognizant enough to be a sponge to soak those things up and then pass those along, I think it's helpful. I think, a couple things. Staffing's been tough the last few years. They say we've had a lot of headwinds coming at us, and it's a pendulum that does swing. I've been through several of these, right? This one's different, though. I will tell you, this one's different. And so we're earning our stripes right now as recruiters if we stay in the business. The pendulum will swing, and we're starting to see some green shoots happening. So have faith, keep the faith, keep your head down, keep focusing on the activities. But if you're not doing contract staffing today, strongly consider just starting, just trying. Take a small step or two. Go to your best customer that knows, likes, and trusts you, and just ask them, "Hey, who do I need to talk to hire contract staffing here? Who best utilizes contract staff within the organization?" That's it. Just go ask 4 or 5 of those questions and then have a very vulnerable, open, transparent conversation and say, "Look, I'm being asked to bring in some more value resources to my clients. Contract staffing might be one of those that I could bring to you. Is that in your wheelhouse? Is that of interest to you?" Just raise your hand and go ask. And then count on people like me and Signature and others out there in the marketplace that'll be right here behind you to cheer you on, help you navigate those conversations around bill rates and pay rates and terms and those types of things. We're here to help. And really, it's fun for us on this side because we get to work with recruiting firms literally all over the country that get into those tough conversations and then they phone a friend. And then we get to help maybe provide just a little bit of insight that helps them get through that situation. So start small and start where you are would be my last 2 comments.
Great. Super actionable, makes a ton of sense, right? Go to where it's easy, right? Your best client. They're that for a reason. So great advice, great conversation.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, and just like it's been great to get to know you this year and have this conversation. And looking forward to kind of meeting up at different events in the future. Super valuable podcast conversation for the listeners. And if you're not in the staffing space, you don't have an EOR provider, or if you do, if you have questions, talk to Jon, talk to his team. They're awesome. Obviously, they know what they're talking about, and they've been in your shoes, right? So they can talk the talk with you. So I appreciate you, Jon, for being here, man. This is awesome.
Well, it was my pleasure. Great to be part of your team. Look forward to the next one.
Likewise. Well, make sure to connect with Jon on LinkedIn if you haven't. We'll have his LinkedIn in the episode description. Reach out to him if you have any questions on EOR services, anything and all things EOR and staffing. If you got value out of this, like, subscribe, 5 stars, all that fun stuff, wherever you are, whatever platform you're listening to us on or watching, if you're on YouTube. And until next time, y'all, happy hunting.